I'm playing what might be the most beautiful golf course in the entire world. How beautiful is that? This is Fairmont Banff Springs, a gem tucked deep within the Canadian mountains. Built in 1911, this course was once ranked ahead of Augusta National. I have two goals for this video. First, find out if Fairmont Banff Springs is the most beautiful golf course in the world. And second, I want to shoot 6 under par. So after packing my bags, escaping the scorching heat of Dallas, and stopping at Northwood, a 9-hole course hidden beneath the tallest trees on earth, I continued north to Canada to experience Banff for myself. Wow, what an incredible experience the Redwoods was. We just flew in from there here into Calgary. We're heading out to Banff to see one of the most beautiful golf courses in the entire world. Can't wait to check it out. Let's go. Even in the car right up to this place, the views are incredible. What a place. Our hotel is literally called Castle in the Rockies. I feel like I'm in Narnia. It's time to get checked in. This is what it's like to be at the Fairmont in Banff, Canada. And if you guys enjoy experiences like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 4 million subscribers, so hit that button and enjoy the video. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm about to get to go play golf right down there. See everybody playing right now. That's crazy to think about. This is like another planet. But before we start, I need to get a lay of the land. This is Steven, the director of golf here at Banff Springs. He's been here for over 2 decades. That's crazy.
Part of the fabric.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And let me tell you, no one loves this place more than this guy. He knows everything there is to know. And he told me about the over 100-year history that this place holds. It's actually got some wind right now. I didn't think there'd be wind out here. Whoa. Well, that's stunning. Oh my gosh. But Banff is not the only place that offers an incredible experience. What even is this? This episode is brought to you by Kalshi, but more on that later. All right, this is it. This is Banff Springs Golf Course. I can't wait to see how this plays today. What an interesting test. What an interesting site. What a beautiful site. Today I want to bring you in and give you the feeling of what it's like to be here right now. Because this place, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Redwoods were really cool. This place, it's another level as well. I feel like I'm almost in Hogwarts or something. I don't know. Stanley Thompson designed this golf course, but again, it's 414, straight downwind. There's the hole. And look at that backdrop. There's not many times I get on a golf course and just smile on the first tee. All right, let's go. This should be sick. Run, ball, run. That's running up there. Well, we'll see how far that is, but that was a good drive. A little heelward there, but that went straight down the middle. There's just something about a golf ball against a backdrop that is awe-inspiring for me. This is a little different today. I want to take you on a journey. I'm trying to find the most beautiful golf course in the entire world. And that's not going to be easy. I don't know how you get too much better than this golf course. Look at this little place. See, this is golf. By the end of this video, I'm going to rank Banff Springs against my own personal top 5 most beautiful courses I've ever played. Before we do that, let's hear a quick word from this video's sponsor, Kalshi. Kalshi is a peer-to-peer prediction market where you can trade on almost anything: sports, cultural events, and so much more. Trades are updated in real time, and Kalshi is available nationwide. You can get a $20 bonus if you use the link in the description. Oh, I had a good drive. It just ran into the rough here, but up next to the green, a little 40-yard shot. Shouldn't be too difficult to get up and down here. 63 yards. That was a great shot. I don't know the firmness of the greens. I would expect they're a little softer up in the north, but it's downwind, quite heavy, out of rough. So I'm gonna play this about 10 yards short, 12 yards short, and run this up. Sit down. Sit. Go in. Oh! That'd have been sick. Great shot in there. Nice little birdie. I just look over to the left and it's a giant spear-like mountain. Well, that's a great start on a beautiful hole. I'm currently 1 under through 1, feeling good. But according to Steven, I've got to watch out for hole 4.
From up top, you're hitting it down.
And that's on what hole again? The
hole 4.
Yep. They call it the Devil's Cauldron, and I'm kind of scared to find out why. Apparently, it was also once voted the world's most beautiful par 3. But first, I've got to handle hole 2. Rundle is number 2. The second hole is called Rundle. Well, this hole is pretty sweet. You don't see many golf holes like that in the world, do you now? False front and then over to the right looks like it stays up a little bit more. Yeah, on the left it rolls into the bunker. Off the right, into us just a bit. 161 yards. And here we go. It's a little left there. Good distance though. You know, one thing I did forget about was the elevation change, and I was playing a 10 o'clock shot like it was back in Dallas. So I got lucky there, but that should have gone almost over the green. I must have hit it just a fraction softer. These greens are probably a little bit slower today. So let's see if I can get it all the way there. They are pure though, they look really nice. 51 feet. Come on, go. Go! Ugh. Wow, look at that thing roll out. That's crazy. All right, par. I'll take that. We're off to a nice start, and so far this environment is incredible. It's almost distracting. I'm struggling with that right now. And every tee box is surprising me more than the last. I mean, what are we talking about? This makes no sense. Look at this, guys. You know, usually the golf course is a star, but the scenery's just pulling me towards it. Holy crap. Looks like it's pretty straightforward. I feel like just hitting it at those bunkers. See if I can get a nice shot shape against the backdrop. That is sick. That's it. Oh, just a little far left, but that was a good drive. We still have a lot to see in order to find out if Banff Springs tops my list as the most beautiful golf course in the world. I don't even know how to rank it now. Some of the courses on my list are gonna be pretty tough to beat, but you can't count this place out yet. Well, this looks like a cool design. It goes up and over, almost like a Donald Ross. He did have influence in this. 162. I'm gonna play this a little short. Let it run up. It's going about 5% more, so 8 more yards, so 8 yards shorter. 62, so 54, just under 1030. Yeah, that's great. Go in. Go in! That was awesome looking. This is a sick corridor of a hole. Like it goes to the right and everything on the right's just trees. So you can't miss it right. Nice little eagle putt here, huh? Good distance control out of there. judged it right. And you look back and there's another mountain. This is one thing that Steven was telling me. The course was specifically designed so each hole frames up a mountain, looking both forwards and backwards down the fairway. Goes right to left, down the hill a bit. 12 feet. Come on. Let's go. That's sick. What a great eagle there. We're 3 under through 3, heading into the Devil's Cauldron. This hole is a big part of the reason why Banff was ranked higher than courses like Augusta.
So an interesting fact, 1939 was the first unofficial world rankings, and Augusta National ranked 10th.
No way.
World, and Banff Springs ranked 8th.
I think I'm just gonna sit here for the rest of the video and take the day off. I don't know how you get too much better than this golf course. I mean, Cypress is in a league of its own, but this is quite special as well. All right, 183. Down 11, 12. Downwind like crazy. Come on, spin. Wow, that didn't spin. My heart rate's up a little bit. It's so funny when I hit that shot, because it's a nerve-wracking shot over water, my brain just locks into it being golf. And then I almost forget that I'm hitting into this mountainside. So now we're taking a little bit of a detour to where the original tees were for this golf hole. And albeit this tee box is really beautiful, there's a reason why Stanley wanted this tee down here. So I'll show you why in just a brief moment. Look at this little place. See, this is golf. Dang. This is sick. This tee box, you get to hit right on the water. Right next to it. What if I made a hole-in-one right here? Good shot though. That's pretty cool. I like both shots, but this is sick. 51 feet down the slope, 3%er. This goes right to left, then back to the right. I think it's gonna go more left to right than right to left here though. Play this thing 40 feet. Good putt. Good putt, pretty straight. I thought it'd break more to the right in that first part, or middle part, I guess you could say. It stayed straight. All right. What a great par there. Fun hole. The Cauldron was a one-of-a-kind par 3, but I was told hole 7 has perfect 360-degree views of the entire mountain range. And I can't forget that hole 8 is Steven's favorite hole on the entire golf course.
I'm gonna say hole number 8 is the shortest par 3. It's
I like that, by the way.
Water and bunkers.
Okay.
And you don't feel the wind above the tree lines.
We've still got a lot to see. Now we're turning back into these mountains over here. I mean, everywhere you look is you're just hitting against mountain ranges. But looks like I gotta go up over the left-hand side of these trees. Wind's off the left. That might be a little left, but I don't know. Hit it just a little farther left than I wanted, but that always makes for an interesting day. Just a little too far left. Here we go. This should be fun. 4. That's pretty good. I'll take that any day of the week. Look at that strike. Right in the dead center. Barely caught anything too. Came out clean. You know, and even if you're having a bad hole, Just look up at those mountains. That'll take your worries away. 39 feet down the hill. Play normally like 35, 34 feet. Slower, it's gonna play 30. Oh, just under 40 feet. Oh, a little short there, guys, a little short. Good par. I'm so happy I made par there after that drive. I didn't really know where to go or how far left to be, so I overdid it, especially with the wind off the left. Got lucky. Hit a great shot up to here. Hit a horrible putt. Made a nice par. So right now we're 3 under through 5. Not that bad. Pretty solid start. Birdie on 1, eagle on 3, par on the other holes. Let's keep it going. Ooh, oh my gosh. Look, look, look. That's an elk.
Since Banff Springs sits in the middle of a national park, seeing all types of different animals is a daily occurrence.
Oh my gosh.
Steven even told me there are rumors of a grizzly named the Boss that treks through the course every week. It's said that he is the most dominant grizzly in the region for the last 20 years. And he even has a local restaurant named after him. Hopefully we don't run into him.
Let's come check this out. We got some trash cans right here. The bears will come dig in it. So if you try to lift, they can't lift it. You gotta push it. There's like a little latch here. Push it and then go up. Anyway, that's how you do it. All right, it's 370. I think I'm gonna give this one a bit of a rip. I can't get over how beautiful it looks, but when in Rome, you know? Or Banff. Just a little right. Come on. Go! Just short. I suck. All right, time to get up and down now. This is a cool green. Love how it goes up. That's awesome. 18 yards to where I want to land it. I want to run this thing up. Get it up by the hole. Come on. A little far past, but that was solid. Good chance for birdie. 5 feet. This thing breaks quite hard. Sick. Very nice. That's a good birdie. What a tough putt. I'm rolling the rock right now. How do I describe it? When you play good and you're at an amazing golf course, there's really nothing better than that in golf. Oh, the course is a fun test. You smell that? That's some flowers right there. I don't know what those are exactly. It might be the pine trees too. Golf course is a cool test of golf. You know, there's some shorter par threes but demanding par threes. And then you've got some par fours that have a little bit of teeth to them, like the last hole, where I almost made bogey. So it's a good mix of golf course so far. Let's go.
My camera guys told me that Banff had a little surprise for me at the snack shack.
You want a little something?
Let's see what Paris has in store for me.
So I've got, these will be our specialized beers. Pretty much all of them are local.
Very nice.
I've also got a little surprise as well.
Uh-oh.
You ready?
Oh no. Oh my gosh, Canadian chocolate milk, huh?
Chocolate milk, absolutely.
Oh my
Only
God.
the best for the best.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, of
Is this like
course.
the most famous one here in Canada, or?
Absolutely, yeah.
It is.
I feel like you can't go wrong with any chocolate milk though.
That's true. Well, you can.
Can you?
Yeah, old doesn't work very well.
Okay, that's fair, that's fair.
It's not good.
I've also got a second one in there if you want one. For
Oh
the
my gosh.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to get chocolate wasted.
That's fair, that's fair. We're not even halfway through yet, so.
That's a good chocolate milk. I'll give that an 8.6. It's really good. I'd take it. Huh?
Quite the surprise.
Oh, you surprised? I mean, I got surprised. I can't believe they have chocolate milk here. Now you're gonna have to start stocking it all the time. Always make sure to stay fueled on the golf course, guys.
And that's why I bring my snack pack and my Bugged Up. Drive Hydration is my new hydration drink. It has no carbonation, no sugar, and is loaded with electrolytes. It's the perfect drink to stay dialed throughout your round. Drive Hydration is available online and in store. Go get some.
Now we're on to Hoodoo, the only hole on the course where you can see every mountain peak from a single fairway.
Well, let's hit a good drive here. This hole is shaped by this tree. You almost have to hit a draw. I mean, you can hit a cut, but it doesn't seem like it's as easy. Wind's off the left. Let's stripe this drive. Yeah, that's good. Right up that left-hand side. I knew that wind was going to push it over eventually. I hear this is the signature, one of the signature holes out here. Let's see what they have brewing out here in the fairway. This is ridiculous. I've never seen anything like this. All of my golf, 22, 23 years of playing golf, 24 maybe even. Never seen anything like this. Look at this. .360 view of every mountain peak around this area. This is called the Sleeping Buffalo Mountain. You can see the shape of the top of the mountain and then how it falls off in the back and the front head of it there. Looks like a sleeping buffalo. What is this place? 261. Man, it looks shorter than it actually is. 261 into the wind. This is a 5-wood. Stripe of 5-wood here. Oh, I striped it too good. Oh, it's getting hit by the wind. I think that's bunker, pin high. Great swing though. Uh-oh, Piscadio. Oh, that's not bad. Okay. That was close, it just got hit by the wind, dang it. A little too far. That'll work. Well, this is to get to 5 under. That was not an easy shot. Note to self, when I play this golf course again, don't miss it right when it's this back flag. Anywhere else that'd have been good. Not there. Oh no, it didn't break. That's Sour Patch. That's a Sour Patch moment there. Dang it. Missed opportunity there. It's 4 under through 7 holes. So I wish I would have gotten up and down, but sometimes that's life. What a cool hole though. Bunkers guarding the whole entire green. Yeah, I like this design. That is fresh and cold.
You know, I've played golf now for 25 years of my life, and moments like this are exactly what it's all about.
There's not many times I get on a golf course and just smile on the first tee. Holy crap. I think I'm just gonna sit here for the rest of the video and take the day off.
Now let's check out hole 8, Papoose, Steven's favorite hole on the entire course.
142. Into the wind, playing 5 yards short, 6 yards short. This is gonna play almost 150 here. Sit, hit it wind, hit it. Ah, too far. Wind died. That was a nicely struck shot though. Wasn't that kid-like feeling, but that was a pretty solid shot. 57 feet, left to right. Played 60 feet. That's it. That went forever. Yeah, it falls away right here. This is a cool stream though. It's beautiful. All right, here we go. This is such a sweet experience.
This is a place where you just need to soak it all in.
I mean, wow.
Let's close out the front 9 with another birdie.
Par 5, this hole's called Jinx. Why is it called Jinx? I don't know. Let's find out. That should be great. I think it's great. In regards to beauty for golf courses, guys, like this has got to be up there. It's definitely top 5, not even a question. I'm hitting into the Sleeping Buffalo right now. That mountain, it's pretty sick. It's a 170, there's not much wind. Wind's kind of died down, so it's just a 10-30, 9-iron. This hole's called Jinx. Please don't jinx me. Is it gonna jinx me or is it not? Well, that was pretty good. Not only what a shot, but what a backdrop. Holy crap. This has every element of nature besides the ocean, but it's a river. This literally has every element of nature up in the mountains. You got the river, you got the trees, the pine trees. Great golf course. Huge mountains. Well, I can see why they call it Jinx. His green is crowned. These are the toughest holes to make. Hit this thing 16 feet. 15, 16 feet. Yep. Look at that ball. And that's why they call it Jinx. Dang. Well, this hole's jinxed a lot of people, but not me today. Nice birdie to finish off the 9. That has got to be one of the coolest 9 holes of golf. Let's see what the back 9 has in store for us. It may be better.
We are 5 under through 9, which is right on track. So far, the front 9 proved to be quite special.
360 view of every mountain peak around this area.
But according to Steven, the back 9 is even better. They say 14, 15, and 16 hold the secret as to why this place is called the Castle in the Rockies.
Look at this. We got Finn over here is your name, right? Yeah. Offering us towels halfway through. What is it?
Lemongrass
and
eucalyptus.
Lemongrass and eucalyptus. That's amazing. Well, I think after that birdie, I deserve a little hit of chocolate milk. The local Canadian chocolate milk. Come on, let's go. This is 230 straight in the breeze. This has got a little bite on this hole. Wow. This is a great hole. It's awesome deception too, because that bunker makes you feel like you can't miss it left, and the water right makes you obviously feel like you can't miss it right. So it makes you feel like you have to have a perfect shot here. I think there's probably more room over the left, but let's see if I can hit a stripe of a shot. Sit? Maybe? Oh, that's gotta sit. Oh, I forgot about the elevation. No. Felt like I had an amazing shot, just too far. Hit it way too far. Elevation, Bryson, elevation. Darn it. Dang, that went too far. Let's see if I can get this up and down. Just a foot further. Got to make this, come on. If I want to have any chance of the record, I've got to make this. That looks lined up beautiful. That was a great par save there. A little disappointing on the tee shot, but that's huge for the number. I'm highly considering this thing might be somewhere up there near the top of the list. for the most beautiful golf course in the entire world. But there's a lot more golf to play. I am also 5 under through 10. Got to keep it going. Oh, the shine on the trees, that is sick. Beautiful. There she be. 405, straight into the wind. This has got to be driver. Wow. That's another wow. I keep getting wowed out. Looks like this is a straightaway hole. Bunkering everywhere. The moguls. It's a great design. Honestly, beautiful design. All I'm gonna do is pick out a spot. See that tree that's kind of glistening in that row of trees that's gone. I'm gonna pick that spot, hit it right on line. No. Oh no. Ah, that's a coyote that just went across. Look at that. Okay, hold up. I'm gonna show you guys something. One sec. I'm a crazy man. There we go. I mean, look at this. 108. This calls for a 10 o'clock 50. Out of the rough. Yeah, that's a perfect shot. 115 shot. A little upslope. Yeah, I love it. Ah, just a little right, dang it. Came out right. That's too bad, but a birdie putt. Well, good distance. Cool little walk. Look at this little walk. Around the trees, through the pines. That's sick. What an experience. God, look at that thing. That was a good roll. All right. Got to have my wedges closer. That's something I've been struggling with quite lately. Well, for my whole career, how about that? Well, this is pretty beautiful. Oh my goodness. Par 4, you're hitting into mountains, in between pine trees. Beautifully outlaid golf hole. Look at the bunkers, you see the bunkers, the shaping of the bunkers, where the fairway looks like it is compared to where it is. There's more room over the bunker left. It's deceptive. And the wind's gonna flow through here. I feel like it's gonna flow left to right a little bit because this corridor. We've got a hotel in the background, in the trees. Beautiful. Oh, whoa, wait a second. Wind's not going off the left. Oh, in the bunker. I hit that and I'm like, that's perfect. I guess that wind's more off the right. Yeah, the wind was coming off the right. Couldn't feel it on the tee box. That's a great design. That is an incredible design. Shoot. .27, into the wind, up this hill, 10 o'clock shot. All right, it's not bad. It's a good shot out of the bunker off the upslope. Soft sand, good shot. Oh my gosh. Look at the hotel, the Fairmont Hotel. That is beautiful. Wow. Look at the pines, like spires, up against The backdrop of Sleeping Buffalo, man. This is creeping up there in my list. The most beautiful golf courses in the entire world. 36 feet. Play this thing 6, 7 feet short, 29 feet. Come on. Good putt though. Look at the Fairmont. How beautiful is that?
The Fairmont from here looks pretty incredible, but this doesn't compare to hole 14, which perfectly frames the hotel against the mountains.
Looks like a very difficult hole here.
Let's play these next 2 holes and see if we can get to 6 under on our way there.
Oh my gosh. Look at this little path. That is so cool. I don't know what to say. Like, this is impressive. I am impressed. I'm surprised this golf course isn't more talked about. So it's 218, but it's gonna play like 208 because of the elevation. I'm gonna take that into account this time. I'm gonna try out my new 7-iron. It's got a new shaft in it, so we're trying this thing out, but 7-iron feels nice. Let's see if this thing plays. Stop it, wind. Wow, that wind moves it. That was a good strike too. That was nice. It's just there's more wind off the right. Cool hole. Up against the trees, you see how that ball was flying and it was just highlighted by the sun against those trees and that mountain. That's what I like to see. That's what kind of gets me going. 33 feet. This is a swinger here. Oh my gosh, it's gotta go. Ah, that's frustrating. I'm like backing off right now. I can't make a birdie. Ah, disappointing. But it's fine. It's fine. We're fine. 5 under. Come on, get it to 7. I think there's a par 5 coming up, so that should be doable, but I need to make birdie here soon too.
All right, we're walking up to the 14th tee box. This hole is called Wampum, which means the prize in First Nations. I can see why this place has had multiple royal visits. It truly looks like a castle, nestled perfectly in the Rocky Mountains.
This looks like a very difficult hole here. All right. Yeah, it kind of gets tight back here, which is sweet. Come on, let's hit a good drive here. That's too big of a draw. Well, just a little left of where I wanted to. This wind's kind of tricky, kind of nuts. All right, pretty cool hole though. Into the wind, tough hole. All right, pull to the left, not the best drive, 108. Not much wind right now. I think this 10 o'clock shot should be just fine. Half swap, half shot. Well, I'm pretty pleased with that. Considering I couldn't see where it went, but it ended up just fine. Well, everybody, I've got 25 feeters straight up the hill, a good chance of birdie. Need to knock this one in. Lock in. There you go. Locked it in, baby. That is what we needed. It's funny, this golf course almost makes me want to play better. The beauty, you just have to play better out here. Look at that peak. You know what I want to do though? go up to the top of it and then like squirrel dive off of that and just fly down in a squirrel suit. I gotta take a picture of this.
It looks like there's a little trail on the way to the 15th tee. Let's check this out and see what we can find.
This is so beautiful. Nice own private little beach in between the rocks. That's sick. I don't know what else to say. There's nothing to say about that.
Now let's check out the 15th tee, one that Steven said has another spectacular view. It'd be nice to get another birdie here.
Let's see what this is all about. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is special. All right. Par 4, 475. Let's see what I got. Now that's a drive. Oh my goodness, you have another chocolate milk? 2 of them.
Yeah.
Oh, that was too good. I gotta have another one.
You got it.
I have to have another one.
Okay.
Just one more though. Just
Okay.
one more. Okay.
You don't want to take one for later. There you go.
I'll take it for later. 101, playing 90 yards. Time to stuff this. It's a little short. Not bad. Knocking this putt to get to 7 under. Come on. 17 feet up the hill. Whew. Knock this in. Gah! That broke hard to the right. Dang. I almost just gave that away. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. That was scary. Oh, don't scare me like that. This is another tight little driving hole here. Got it in these little nooks and crannies. But I'm gonna give it a go. This is gonna be a nice little draw shot. Around the corner, left of the bunkers. And hopefully get myself a nice wedge in there and give myself another chance for birdie. Just how I drew it up there. Yeah, that's beautiful. Gorgeous. What a gorgeous drive there. It's funny because like where I hit driver on these golf holes, it gets super tight. It's not like an open golf course. I thought this was gonna be an open golf course, but it gets tight where I drive it, which is a great design. It's easier for people that hit it a little further back. Did I almost drive that green? Oh my Lanta. I didn't know I could almost drive it. Well, folks, we've got 43 yards. This is not the easiest of shots. It's a little interesting of a lie. It's a little different lie. Sitting down, downwind, knuckly. 43 yards, gonna land at about 35 yards and hopefully run it out 8 yards. Right next to the hole. Come on. Sit. Sit. All right. That was nice. That was a good chip. Let's see how these last few holes play out. 16 was really cool. Downwind, pretty easy hole for me. I got lucky hitting a good drive here. Amongst an unbelievable backdrop. But I want to see how these 2 holes finish off for this golf course. 6 feet. 1%, it's gonna be close to the edge, just over 1. Thank goodness. As we close out hole 16, I'm starting to get more confident about my ranking. But in order to truly know if this is the most beautiful course in the world, 17 and 18 will have to finish out strong. Let's go get our answer. It's 350. Okay, I might have to hit 3-wood here. I don't know if this is the right club, but I'm gonna give it everything I got. Come on. Par 4, drivable. Let's hit a 350 with a 3-wood. Just a little left, son of a gun. Oh, right up in the lip of the bunker. Shoot. That was a deep 3-wood though. What a cool drivable hole. There's almost 2 drivable holes on this golf course, and I love drivable golf holes. I think they make a golf course. If you only have one or you don't have a drivable hole, it's just not as fun. It's heavily guarded too, this green. So it makes it quite fun. You can go for it and not get too screwed, but have a difficult shot. About a 20-yard shot. Down. All right, that's fine. Not that bad, not that good. Although it was better than my Augusta shot. 18, that was sick. Just to get to 8 under. No. I chickened out and didn't play enough break. That's embarrassing on the 17th hole.
We are currently 7 under, which means we have already checked off one of our goals. But now it's time to play the final hole and get the answer we came here for. Is Fairmont Banff Springs the most beautiful golf course in the world?
So I believe the fairway dogleg's right. I was looking at the screen over there pretty hard. I'm gonna hit one hard over these grouping of trees. It's gonna go right over those people. That was smoked. Those guys turned around. They must have looked, heard a ball go right over their head. That was sick. That's gonna be deep out there. I'm excited to see where that is. And this hole is called Windy, so come on, gust it up. I wanna see that thing next to the green. This is an unbelievable view. What a finishing hole. 172. This is what I mean by finding the right place. Literally, you couldn't put a golf course in a better place. 172 downwind, 7, 8 yards, well 10 yards, so 62, and then, so 55 shots. So this is just under a 1031 right here. Pitching wedge, 3/4, come on. I'll be right. That was a sick shot. That was good there. Time for eagle. Last hole. What a way to finish this round off if I made this. 28 feet. Play at 21 feet.
When I came here, I was searching for the world's most beautiful golf course.
All right, this is it. This is Banff Springs Golf Course.
But what I found was so much more. From the people we met, to the mountains framing every hole.
How beautiful is that?
And all the little moments in between, this place was an experience I'll never forget. Now let's make this putt and rank this course.
Break. Ah. Tough. That thing kept rolling out. This is for a nice round of golf here. Oh, and that's too bad. Well, but you know what? The most amazing thing about this round of golf is that I could finish off like that and still not have a care in the world. Well, I accomplished my first goal of shooting 5 or 6 under, that was something else. That was nice, but I really couldn't tell you how ethereal this place is. I mean, look at that. It is unbelievable. And so in regards to one of the most beautiful golf courses in the world, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to place this number 2. I know Cypress and then this. It's definitely, I mean, Cypress is tough. I don't know how Cypress is ever gonna get beat, but this is number 2.